There are three pillars to DoD's investment today. DoD made an investment in MP. They also provided us with a long-term, a 10-year price floor contract that allows us to earn a fair return on the commodity. And then they also provided a 100% offtake for a new magnet facility that we're building that will significantly expand. It will 10x our magnet capacity. What's so important about this is that with the supply chain, as you may have heard me say, if we have all the rare earths in the world, if we don't have the downstream, if we don't have the magnet production, or vice versa, if we have magnet production but don't have the rare earths, then it's all for naught. And so it's really important to look at this supply chain on a vertical basis. And so you really have to credit President Trump and his administration and of course our partners at the Pentagon for sort of looking at this challenge and recognizing that MP has put together a vertically integrated champion, and the best solution to kind of catalyze this supply chain is making a substantial commitment to us, which they've done. We're very excited about that. And lastly, I would just say that this is a huge win for taxpayers, because the structure of the deal is such that not only is DoD now economically our largest shareholder, but they have upside participation in both the commodity and in the magnet business.
Hey, Joe, come on in here because you understand this space like pretty much nobody else. Talk to us about what you see as significant about an investment such as this, especially from a position of economic statecraft.
Well, I wanted to ask Jim about that. Jim, I feel like you're underplaying what has come out today. Can you give us size and scope, put into context why this is such a big deal in your industry and what's unique about it?
Thanks, Joe. It's good to see you. Well, I think not to get too wonky, but I would recommend, since we are on Bloomberg, for those in our investor relations, we obviously put out a deck for this morning's call, and I really encourage people to look at that, and we go through a lot of the economics, but I'll give you the summary, which is that we have totally transformed MP's business overnight. We've gone from, the challenge, Joe, as you know, is that the Chinese historically have sold rare earths at a substantial loss because they use it mercantilistically as a strategic source of control of the downstream.
Which is a way of saying that they'll flood, which is a way of saying, Jim, that they will flood the market to take market share, which is one of the things that has always scared investors away from your company and other companies in this space.
Correct. And so if you look at the math, we basically have transformed MP where we can earn, we have long-term contracted cash flows. So we have 10-year agreements where essentially, if you kind of look out normalized, we believe we can do 650 million plus of EBITDA. And this is, and again, look at the various parts, but this is taken our business from what was sort of a volatile commodity business to a long-term contracted economic platform, which enables us to make further investments downstream. And those investments downstream, we now have 100% offtake in DoD as a customer. And if I can, Joe, let me add one more point that I think is so important, because you hit the nail on the head about the Chinese flooding the market. The Chinese very thoughtfully realize that, particularly when we think about physical AI and the future of warfare, robotics, drones, the Chinese are willing to lose billions to play for trillions of dollars of downstream market cap. And when we think about our great leaders in technology, whether it's Jensen Huang or Elon Musk talking about robotics being potentially the largest industry in the history of the world, rare earth magnets are important, very important, extremely critical feedstock to that. And so we've got to preserve that trillions of dollars of downstream enterprise value. And that obviously is what we're about at MP, is making sure that our downstream industry has that feedstock. And obviously today's announcement ensures that we can make those investments.
Jim, the Defense Department is famously not splashy about anything. It's hard to argue that this was not flashy. $400 million equity investment in a publicly traded company. Have they ever done this before?
I think it's a pretty unprecedented situation, and I think that this is obviously a very unique circumstance. And obviously, we are honored and humbled by it, Joe. And as you know, since we've been talking for many years, I guess there's the old expression of it takes a lifetime of hard work to become an overnight success. We've been at this for 10 years at MP. And actually, interestingly enough, today is the eight-year anniversary of my co-founder and I bought the Mountain Pass assets out of bankruptcy 8 years ago, where we began the turnaround to restore this full supply chain. And I think that DoD and the administration realize that we've got to look at the supply chain holistically. And hopefully this is a model for future other scenarios where we have strategic industries that we have to return, and we've got to figure out a way to take on mercantilist economics. And so this is, I think, hopefully a good model in doing so.
So Jim, to that point, you operate in a specific portion of sort of the rare earth space when it comes to these magnets. In your view, because you're in this space, where does the U.S. still lag, and where does the U.S. need to invest in order to try to catch up, if even possible?
Well, we're vertically integrated. So we at MP, and there's nobody like this.
But I just mean from a materials
and
processing perspective. I understand you are vertically integrated, but what about for all of the rare earths that will be in demand in the near future?
Sure. Well, so there are two major categories. There are the light and the heavies, and as part of this announcement, DoD is actually also committing some capital for us to build out samarium separation at Mountain Pass. Samarium is a feedstock into a different kind of magnet that's actually really critical for military purposes as well. And so, essentially, Tim, if you want to refine rare earths, so forget the ore bodies around the world. If you want to refine and separate them to then become feedstock to magnets, there are two places to do it. There's sort of the Chinese sphere of influence or Mountain Pass, California. And so I think this basically catalyzes us to move downstream and really be able to have MP as an economic platform that can encourage additional investment, really in all spheres, in mining and across the stream all the way down to magnets.
Jim, I think people are listening and they're like, yeah, if we're thinking about developing our supply chains here and creating national security for things that are so important to so many different aspects of our lives here in the United States, people are going to say, yeah, this makes sense. But do you feel like this is potentially a step towards you becoming a state-owned enterprise?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. In fact, I think it's actually the opposite, which is, for the first time, we see an actual data point of how we in the West, with free market capitalism, can take on mercantilism, but doing so in a way that is along with our value system. So let's be very clear about this. DoD is becoming economically our largest shareholder, but they will vote with our board. And they expect us to be a thriving public company. They want us to continue to run the company for shareholders. And obviously their interest will be a benefit for taxpayers to the extent that we continue to compound, which we expect. And then they also have upside sharing. And so I want to really remind people that if you look at this deal, it was a win-win-win. Obviously, the market likes it. I think our economic platform has totally changed. But we're serving a key national security initiative, enabling trillions of dollars of downstream enterprise value to be more secure. But the taxpayer also has upside in this. And so I think that this is sort of, again, it's a new model. It's unprecedented in a sense, but it's, of course, because we're facing a challenge that we haven't faced before.
Yeah, I guess on some level, Jim, the upside the taxpayer has is if your stock goes up, the investment that the DoD has in it goes up. I was talking to an investor today asking about this, and I said, well, what does it mean for the taxpayer? And they said, really, all it means is a better bet on national security issues. So I might push back
Joe,
on that.
If I may push back, because and if you look at the structure of the deal, it's not just the shareholding. There are three pillars. It's the shareholding. There's then upside participation in the commodity. And then there's also upside participation in our magnet business. So there's actually three different mechanisms of upside sharing for the taxpayer.
And can you clarify one thing in the details? Yeah. The agreement, it's $130 floor, right? Or is it 110? Sorry.
110.
It's $110 floor. That is just for the actual concentrate, refined, and metal. That is not batteries, right? Sorry, that is not permanent magnets.
That's all NdPr products. So you're right, concentrate, oxide, and metal.
So it's
and then
commodity.
When you move downstream, though, we also have 100% offtake for the new facility that we're going to build called 10X. And as part of that offtake, we'll have a minimum EBITDA guarantee, and then there'll be a catch-up for DoD, and then we'll share. We're 50-50 partners. And so again, Joe, this is a transformational public-private partnership.
Right.
But the taxpayer was really well represented in the structure.
But Jim, one thing, you probably will be getting a lot of pushback from investors, from media, whoever, saying what we just brought up, which is your biggest stockholder will be the Defense Department. And doesn't that bring a concern that the federal government has so much say in what is supposed to be a publicly traded private company?
Yeah. Well, actually, interestingly, as part of our deal, DoD will be voting their shares with our board. And so I really think that this is, again, it's a new structure that contemplates the fact that we need to be a successful public company. So this is very different. I know that maybe there's historical examples of where the government needed to come in and rescue an industry. It's actually the opposite of what's happening here. The government wants to achieve an important national security objective, and we at MP are able to help them achieve that objective. And so they are going to help support us in accelerating investment in our space, and they're going to create the conditions that allow us to invest with a fair return on capital and not be attacked, so to speak, by mercantilism. And in exchange for that, they're going to expect some upside. And so again, I think this is, hopefully it's a new model that we can utilize across some of these verticals that are really challenging for us, where we've been unable to fully reshore industries because we're facing competition that is thinking differently. Again, go ahead.
Sorry, we only have a minute left, and I just want to hear from you how this deal came together and the timeline here. Who did you speak to? Who first reached out? Trips to Washington, trips to Chicago or Nevada? Like, how did it all come together, and when did the discussions first start?
Yeah. Well, we've been having a great active dialogue with the Pentagon going back to the first Trump administration and through the Biden administration, and now obviously the Trump administration. And obviously this is a nonpartisan issue, getting this supply chain back. Suffice to say that what we have been, as you know, in our mission, we've been focused on this single point of failure since the inception of the company. Post-Liberation Day, as we saw the Chinese utilize rare earth magnets in the trade disputes, that basically the cutoff of rare earth magnets had the threat of sending our economy into a deep tailspin. And so that really certainly accelerated some of this discussion.
Got to ask you, though, did you actually talk with President Trump about this? Like, who finally said, got to do it, signed it?
Well, I think you can look at the transaction documents, which were signed at the top levels of the Pentagon. So this was a conversation from the very top levels of the Pentagon.
Is that a yes on Mr.? Is that a yes on the president?
Yeah. So this is again, I don't want to specifically name names of who we spoke to and how the conversations went about. But again, how about this? I will tell you that the president has directly mandated that we fix this supply chain. And so that is public. You can see that. And so the president mandated the secretary on down to fix this supply chain. And I think that this is really bold and decisive action to make that happen.